So my stage name is Rrome Alone.
Mm-hmm.
My middle name is Jerome, which is, primarily what my family and friends called me prior to coming to prison. In my earlier days in prison, I was known as Rome. Rome has kind of been an alter ego of mine of sorts that, I created, as a youth, to kind of like, protect me or give me a, somebody to stick up for me. And, after a while, he just kind of came his own personality within himself. I spell it with two R's, one, because I'm from Raleigh, and I always represent Rough Raleigh. So I spell it Rrome Alone. And of course, Rrome Alone, the name, like, roaming alone,
Mm-hmm.
has kind of been typical of my personality. I've been kind of a loner throughout my life in many regards. And, the fact that I did so many years in prison and solitary, as well as just in prison as well, and just in general, is that I always feel like one of the, key distinctions about being locked up is that, you're alone.
Mm-hmm.
You're not here with your friends or family or nobody that you know. It's just strangers. So, that feeling of being alone just defines me, and, that's a part of my stage name. 29 years.
Okay. And how long have you been on death row that entire time?
I came to death row in 97, so right at 25 years. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, of course, I was a young man. I was 19 when I got locked up.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've done, almost 2/3 of my life in prison, by now. And, so of course, just the maturity aspect. But I've been through a lot of things too. And, I've had a lot of spiritual growth, a lot of maturity, a lot of knowledge that I've accumulated since I've been in prison. And all of those things have definitely, shaped and impacted me.
Mm-hmm. Has music been part of that spiritual growth, or have there been other driving forces?
Yeah, music definitely. Music. I began MCing when I was like 13, and that's one of the things that I was able to do on both sides of the wall. So, being in prison, of course, MCing initially was just all fun. We just rapped in the cipher just to, get some head nods and a couple of, cheers from the crowd. But after years of being in prison, is that I just kind of honed my lyrical content, and it kind of gave me an outlet to express a lot of things that I was feeling on the inside, a lot of things I was going through, particularly me personally. I'm biracial. My mom is white. My father is black. And, that was something that I really struggled with, in my earlier years, because I'm born in 73. And in Raleigh back in the 70s, that wasn't something that was typical. So it wasn't really nobody else that was like me or my family. And that left me kind of, with a lot of shame and, feelings of self-hatred as when I was young. And I really had nobody to talk to about those things. And I didn't speak about it for years. And so just a lot of the trauma that I experienced in life and never expressed is that, I began to talk about those things in my rhymes. And it gave me a platform to express those things, to think about it, to think about how I felt, to write it down, and then craft it in a way that was creative and lyrical that I could remember and memorize and recite to myself whenever I was, going through, those periods of, distress, what I'm saying, and reflection on how I was feeling.
You do feel like it's been a form of therapy to you in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely therapeutic. I mean, I mentioned that in some of my songs, is that music is therapeutic for me. Yes, I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
I basically lived here all my life. I'm from a I grew up in this housing project called Kentwood. So that's, always kind of, shouted out as being where I'm from. We actually moved from Kentwood when I was relatively young, probably about 12. But being that I was 19 when I got locked up, is that, still it's the place that I lived at the longest and the place that I still went to when most of my friends lived in, even when I moved away. And, I was pretty good student in school, but I got expelled from high school in the 10th grade for a prank bomb threat. called to the school, and after that, it was pretty much a wrap on the school tip. Yeah, I mean, I ain't have no idea it was gonna be that type of consequence. You know, I was just, I was with a group of friends, and one of my friends just picked up the phone and called the school and said, "Hey, it's a bomb in the building or something," and started laughing and hung up. We had been drinking, and I asked him, I said, "What you just do?" And he told me. I said, "Call him back. Let me talk to him." So I did the same thing, and didn't even think nothing else about it until the next day when I showed up to school and police were there. So, oh my gosh, wow. So, I've been in prison, like I said, since 1993, and I've been writing rhymes forever, since I've been in here. But I never had an opportunity to record. We don't have any type of recording material. I never had a CD player or MP3 player or even a cassette player in prison. Those things are not allowed in the North Carolina prison system. So for years, I just assumed I'd probably never get my rhymes heard other than, to the people that's in here. And I always wanted to record because I always had this dream, this ambition that, if I was out there, I could have been a rapper and I could have been somebody, that was successful in the rap game. Just wanting to be recognized for being a lyricist and having some skill. But it wasn't until 2016 that they provided phones on death row. So, I never had access to a phone, for one. We only was allowed to make one phone call a year during Christmas, a 10-minute phone call, supervised call. So, it wasn't in 2016 where we actually, got telephone access. And so naturally, when we got telephone access, is that, it opened up a whole other world of communication. And so, being able to connect with people on the outside, and, also involved in some of the programs that I was participating in on the inside. I was a part of this group called Hidden Voices, which was a very, and still is, a very impactful organization. We convened. It was about 5 of us here on death row and some volunteers from the outside. And, we ended up writing a play. And a part of our work with Hidden Voices is that they wanted to do recorded monologues on the phone. So it was because of those recorded monologues that kind of light bulb idea went off in my mind. Like, hey, wait a minute. If I can record a monologue over this phone, maybe I can record some of my rhymes. And that's just how the process began. I met a friend and, asked him if he could record me over the phone. And he said, yeah. And I actually read an article in Rolling Stone. I think it was maybe like 2017, something like that. And it was an article, maybe 2018, I can't recall, but it was an article about Tekashi 6ix9ine and how he became a SoundCloud superstar. And I was like, SoundCloud, I wonder what that is. So I asked my friend about it, and he was like, yeah,
you have 60 seconds remaining.
He was like, yeah, we can put your stuff on SoundCloud. And that's what we started doing. We was putting up acapella freestyles on SoundCloud, and, the process just started unfolding in.
Oh, wow. And then so producers recognized you from there, and you got to collaborate with people in that way?
Yeah, sort of. Not that simple and easy, but
yeah, of course.
That's kind of how it ended up happening, though. I wonder if this guy can help me record. So when I called him back 2 years later, he accepted the call, and I told him, I said, listen, I don't need to intrude on you, but, I talked to you a couple of years ago when you recorded a monologue for me for Hidden Voices, and, I like to try to record some of my rap music. Do you think you can help me in doing that, or if not, do you think maybe you can teach my mom how to, record over the phone or something? So he was like, yeah, sure, I'll help you. So anyway, when we started posting music on SoundCloud, like I said, it was just strictly acapellas. But the prison, they heard them, and I recall I was going to Braxton. I was coming from the chow hall one day, and 2 officers pulled me to the side and was like, Braxton, let me speak to you for a minute. So I was like, yeah, what's up? They was like, heard your music on SoundCloud. I was like, oh yeah, and they was like, yeah, and started naming some of the songs, told some of the songs that are now no longer available on SoundCloud. But I was like, okay. So it was like, yeah, it's pretty dope, man. You know, it's like, how are you doing it? I said, well, I'm, recording over the phone. So it was like, okay. So he said, you ain't got no recording device or nothing like that. So I said, no, I'm just doing it over the phone. So it was like, okay. Well, little did I know that these was two officers that work in the internal affairs division in the prison. So they was actually investigating me. So after that is that, they told me, they said, well, you're doing a great job, man. Keep doing what you're doing. And so that let me know at that particular time that they were aware that I was recording music and, having somebody post it on SoundCloud for me. But that was, I think, maybe 2019 or maybe early 2020, one of the two. But when I finally started making music with producers is, I ended up getting this Live on Death Row video that we did, which was done through New Revolution Entertainment, which is the record label that distributes my music. And so, they created the video, and the team had reached out to some of the reporters on a press release, and the local news station wanted to do an interview with me. So I did an interview, and it was literally advertising it on the news every day, about, this special feature about Live on Death Row that they was talking to an inmate that was behind the walls on death row. So the entire prison system here was like, question mark, like, who is this person that they gonna be talking to? You know what I'm saying? And what are they gonna be talking about? And when they finally, aired the segment, it was about me. It was about the song. They showed clips from the video. They aired, our conversation on the phone, as well as some of my team members, Mark Katz and Michael Betts, and had interviews with them. And of course, at that time, the entire prison system knew about it, all of the staff, etc. So nobody ever actually came to me directly and has said anything to me about seeing the video, but I've had several officers that have, since then, kind of say stuff like, yo, what you doing, working on a rap? You know what I'm saying? When you gonna do another rap or something like that, right? So they are aware of it, and I haven't really had any really negative consequences, other than the fact, and I'm omitting this, I shouldn't have omitted it, but I did get locked up for 37 days back in 2020 for some conduct that was related to my music, but it was really more related to Facebook and social media. That my team had created a Facebook page and, had checked me in as being in Central Prison on Facebook. And so the prison thought that I might have a cell phone. So they put me on lockup to do the investigation. They determined I didn't have a cell phone, but nonetheless, they said that it was against the rules for somebody to operate a Facebook page on my account. It was, a place of self-reflection and self-expression. As I mentioned to you earlier, that I was able to, express a lot of things that, I didn't voice to anybody, in words or in writing or anything, and I hadn't even talked about to myself. So just being able to go into those, places of, privacy within my mind and my heart, my soul, and, express them and write about them in a way that was creative, and they became, affirmations, they became declarations, and, they became recitations that I was able to continue to affirm, to myself as I rapped them. Yeah, so, for one, I definitely view imprisonment and particularly the death penalty in specific, but imprisonment in itself as, being a very, important thing that's happening in our era, in our lifetime in America. Mm-hmm. That, I believe that, in history is that, America's going to be remembered as a time of mass incarceration where, over 2 million people are imprisoned in the United States. And, to me, is that I feel, a deep sense of connection to slavery and, my confinement. Is that, it's a loss of freedom. It's a complete loss of freedom. and the confinement, and as well as the the loss of citizenship. You know what I'm saying? That also comes with being in prison. Is that I feel this connectivity to being enslaved. So I always look at my music in the context of slave narratives. Mm-hmm. That the importance of how if there was able to we would have recording devices in the 16, 17, 1800s that could have recorded the lives and the accounts and the songs of slaves. Is that I feel like that would be something that people would find to be of interest. I would find it of interest. It would be something that to actually hear the voices and the struggles and the experiences of people who experience slavery. So my music this is the way that I look at my opportunity to preserve the actual experience of being an incarcerated person in the era of mass incarceration as being an important political statement, as well as talking about capital punishment. The fact that receiving the death penalty is one. Supreme Court justice said before, it's almost like getting struck by lightning. That's the rarity of it. There's hundreds of thousands of murders that happen in this country, yet only a very few people actually get sentenced to death. And then of those, the ones that do get sentenced to death, is that it's even a very smaller few that actually get executed. So being here in this experience is that I feel is very important to voice what it is like from an actual person who was here and that is experiencing it, not from someone who might be an academic and talking about the statistical data when it comes to imprisonment or slavery or the death penalty, but someone who actually experienced it. So one of the things that is important to me is preserving that. But in addition is that since I've been here is that I've also encountered people that are innocent. Something that blew my mind that I never even imagined that somebody would be innocent on death row. I'm not innocent, but since I've been here, as I said, I've seen at least 6 people on death row in North Carolina go home because they were innocent. And there's still people here that are innocent. And I feel that I have a responsibility and a duty to try to, voice some of their struggle and try to bring awareness to what they are dealing with, with, my music. So that's kind of like my way of, beating the drums and trying to just generate some attention to what's going on with capital punishment in prison. Yeah, of course, the music industry, of course, is definitely a business model that, is, based and curated on what is profitable. With my music is that, I really, as I mentioned, is that I feel like it's something that is, more in the lane of preservation of, experience.
You have 30 seconds remaining.
It's my hope that, people will find that to be of interest, that they'll find it to be of some type of value, that, something such as being in prison, being on death row, and hearing from a person that has actually experienced it. Because, as I mentioned, the thoughts and the feelings and the experiences are something that, they can't be articulated, in any other way. Yeah, as I mentioned, of course, it's my hope that people will find this interesting. And, a lot of the things that I talk about in my music and, hopefully, will be heard eventually is, as I mentioned, some of the deep personal things that I've experienced in prison that nobody can articulate, except for me, and, from my perspective of the things I've experienced. But that there's, many things that other people in prison have felt and that have, lived that, are beneath the surface level of what incarceration is like. The emotional aspect of, being separated from your loved ones, not being able to hug your mother, being on death row and, awaiting the death penalty, waiting to be executed, the fear that comes along with that, and the experience of seeing other people that march down to the death chamber and never return. These are things that, as I said, People can't just speak on unless, it's been actually experienced to live. The humiliation of, going through strip searches, what that feels like, the rape, to feel like, you're having your dignity being raped, just the loss of your own self-respect in some regards, and feeling the complete psychological breakdown of accepting a state of subjection that is, humiliated and dehumanizing. These are things that, I want people to hear and, know that, this is what prison is like. This is, beyond what you see when you're watching a movie or, a film, and it just talks about the violent aspects of prison, or, the little clips that may be shown that, talks about, some rape or, sexual assaults in prison. The things that are like the headline, stereotypes of what prison is, but it doesn't really address some of the deep, trauma that people experience, that I've experienced, and what it's like being in solitary for so many years, and the effects that it has on, your mind in the context of, developing fears and paranoias and things like that. So, I feel like in the music that I express, that's my art. That's the way that I'm able to communicate this. And I hope that people will listen to that music and take away from it something that gives a real account of, what it's like being in prison and on death row. Because I'm like, okay, my EP is released on April the 29th, you know what I'm saying? So, it won't be available, for further listening.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just, the music that I have available right now, Live on Death Row, Live on Death Row, I love it as a song. It's, my idea, my mind state for producing and creating Live on Death Row was kind of like, an homage to Mumia Abu-Jamal. He wrote a book called Live from Death Row, and he used to do, radio broadcasts when he was on Death Row in Pennsylvania. I don't know if you're familiar with Mumia Abu-Jamal, but he's a former Black Panther and a journalist that is in prison for killing a police officer in Philadelphia. And, he's said that he's innocent. He's been locked up since, I think, like 1980. And he began doing a radio broadcast called Live from Death Row. And, he eventually got off death row. He's doing life now in Pennsylvania prison. But the song itself was a homage to, Mumia Abu-Jamal's Live from Death Row broadcast. But I was envisioning it kind of like a reporter that was like in the eye of the storm, and behind the walls, and just giving little snapshots of what is actually occurring here. And that's what I tried to express throughout the song and the verses. I actually quoted real experiences from my life that I know that I've seen since I've been here on death row. So, but this is just like the tip of the iceberg as far as the music that I have and the music that'll be continually coming in the few coming months.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really excited about the release of the EP. I've been working really hard on getting this music out, and just to be at the cusp. As I said, me and my producer, Nick Neutrons, we've probably recorded over 60 to 70 songs so far, and unfortunately, the world just hasn't had hasn't been able to have the time to catch up to everything yet. But now we have this rollout coming, and there should be music released like every 2 weeks now, probably for the remainder of the year. And my album, Mercy on My Soul, is slated for release this year, and this is like my opus. This is the album that I've been dreaming about and wanting to create for the longest. It's already recorded and everything, but the label is just trying to get the promotion and everything in place for its release. So hopefully it'll be released sometime, maybe July of this year.
Oh wow, that's exciting! Wow, 60 or 70 songs. You really have been like working quite hard then.
Oh yeah. As I said, you just really have only heard the tip of the iceberg, with Live on Death Row and a few of the freestyles, but we have so much content that's going to be coming out. Like I said, just, if you just stay tuned, you'll see so much more and hear so much more.